Alright, my pretties. So, today this is a different type of video, and today I'm going to be talking about episodes of Caillou where I find, Caillou to be literally, a brat. Now, for those of you guys who are new to my channel, about 6 years ago, back in 2006, 2020, to be honest, not six, but 2020, I made a video basically saying, why I dislike Caillou. And basically, I want to go ahead and talk about, some episodes of Caillou. Now, of course, there's some banned episodes of Caillou from, from the first and second season. But here's the thing. I mean, there are a couple episodes of Caillou where it was banned for no reason. Well, I can definitely say, I mean, nowadays when I look at it, Caillou is you know, pretty much a really good show. I personally really enjoyed a lot of concept and stuff, which when it comes to Caillou. However, some of the episodes will include, banned episodes of Caillou. So there is definitely that. But I kind of wanted to talk about, no episodes of Caillou I dislike. So I'm definitely gonna say, you know, Caillou is now, a guilty pleasure in my opinion. Like, I mean, every once in a while I do a video, no, not a video, but every once in a while I would watch Caillou. Now, I will say I will respect people's opinions. I know Caillou wasn't, everybody's favorite as a kid, but personally, to me, I personally really do find Caillou to be a guilty pleasure. I mean, yeah, I mean, he wasn't really the best back in, season one and season two, but surprisingly, in the third season, Caillou did improve, by, not being as whiny or anything thing in the later seasons, like when he gets older. So, I'm just definitely going to be talking about not only just the banned episodes, but the episodes of Caillou that got banned I really don't like. Now, these episodes with the uncut versions were seen on international paths, the Caillou 27 Ryoku channel, streaming services, and YouTube. However, I will definitely say is that there are a couple episodes of Caillou that I definitely need to say, basically need to, explain, what episodes of Caillou I don't like. Now, Caillou ran from, I think, late 1997 to 2010, so it's a pretty good show, old show. But I want to say here and say, yes, I am aware Caillou is a kid show, and this is simply my own personal opinion. Now, I'm definitely going to sit here and talk about the banned episodes of Caillou, and I will explain why I don't like them. So let's begin. All right. I think I'm going to start off with, the first episode, the first one of the first episodes of, Caillou that got banned, and that is Caillou Joins the Circus. I know it should have been on the last on the list, considering how a lot of people really don't like this episode. But I definitely do need to sit here and say, there are other bad episodes, but this one just takes the cake. So basically, this episode involves Caillou, is excited to go to the circus, but eventually he finds out from his dad that the circus wasn't today, it was tomorrow. And, Caillou gets upset, he has a tantrum, and eventually, his dad gets mad at him for it, and then they go to the kitchen and he kind of talks back to his dad. But, later on, but however, you see Caillou doesn't have a tantrum so much anymore after Caillou's dad decides to do a circus breakfast. So I definitely do need to sit here and say that this episode was literally a piece of shit. This episode is what had parents, reason why they don't like Caillou, and I can't not blame them. And this is probably one of the reasons why my parents really don't like him. And they never even liked him to begin with. Now, this episode was pretty much restricted due to Caillou having a tantrum over not knowing that the circus was the next day and not the day he hoped it was. So, when he breaks one of his wheels off his toy car as he pounded the floor, causing Rosie to be awoken by her brother's tantrum, Caillou learned his lesson by doing circus related activities with his family. Now, note that this was only banned on PBS Kids in the United States. Cartino left the episode intact with its sister segments and Teletoon and Family Junior, but they never removed this episode. So, I definitely do need to sit here and say the fact that Caillou has a tantrum, over the fact that, a wheel on his car broke, and he got mad because he wasn't going to the circus. And, Caillou's dad, you know, pretty much gets mad with him, but he doesn't really punish him. You know, that is something I can definitely really don't understand. Is like, how come how come Caillou wasn't even punished by his dad when when he had a tantrum. Like, I don't understand why Caillou's dad didn't even punish Caillou for it. That literally makes me wonder how come no, he didn't take any action against his son for this tantrum. And no, I'm not talking about doing Go Anime Punishment Day videos. Like I said, I will say, this episode was pretty much, probably was the reason why kids, end up being bratty. I mean, not all kids are like that, but yeah, this is actually one of the best reasons why a lot of people don't like Caillou. I mean, there's so many Go Anime made style videos of Caillou joins the circus, and I really cannot understand why people would think this is actually really, really funny when it literally is not. So I definitely do need to sit here and say, if you're going to show your kids Caillou, then, you know, just avoid this episode altogether. I'm being dead serious right now. Just avoid this episode altogether. Big Brother Caillou is on this list. Now, this is another season 1 episode, and basically, this episode pretty much involves Caillou, getting excited that he's going to have a little sister of his own, and he gets excited. Now, you do see his mom pregnant in, the first few scenes before she had Rosie. And I think the pregnancy is just done really well, even though it was animated, but it was pretty good. Now, after Caillou's mom has the baby, Caillou isn't sure of what to think of his baby sister. However, later on, while, Caillou is just doing his own thing and his dad was, looking after Rosie, he pinches his sister Rosie, and Caillou didn't get even punished for it. Well, the end of the episode, you do see, Caillou likes his sister. How come Caillou pinched his sister makes me wonder how come Caillou wasn't even punished for it. The fact that his dad, wasn't happy that he pinched Rosie, but I really do wish that Caillou could have gotten punished for it. Just like with the Joey's the Circus one, I really do feel that Caillou should have gotten a justifiable punishment for pinching his sister Rosie. Like, there was no rhyme or reason as to why he pinched his sister. So this episode, apparently with Caillou, was banned angrily due to Caillou pinching Rosie on the cheek due to him not liking her at first. But he learned his lesson that she's just a baby anyway. However, Cartoon Tuneto had aired the episode, marking the episode's premiere in the United States. But, however, it's without the pinching scene. So it pretty much was banned due to Caillou pinching his sister. So, not really too violent, I will say, but I definitely do need to say Caillou should have gotten punished for hitting his own, pinching his own sister. I mean, some people may come out and say, oh, that's harsh. I definitely do need to sit here and say, if you watch the Go Anime videos of Caillou, you'll know damn well how how his punishments were, and they were a lot worse. I'm definitely going to be brutally honest. So, yeah, I definitely do need to sit here and, state that. Caillou's crossword. Now, most of you guys probably do know, a lot of kid shows do involve, some kids, swearing, but not actually swearing like saying the F word or anything. But they usually, put up with a word that, is more kid friendly just so they can teach kids about, how certain words are not nice to people because of the way they react or something. So that's basically what these, episodes are for. So Caillou's crossword basically would be involves Caillou and Leo playing at the park where this one kid said the word stupid and Caillou and Leo start saying it. Eventually they end up hurting Clementine's feelings by calling her Laying, laying her stupid, and Caillou ends up teaching Rosie that, and Caillou's mom ends up being surprised that Caillou you taught his sister that, but eventually Caillou's mom confronts Caillou about the word that he and Leo were saying at the park, and he didn't get punished for teaching Rosie that word. He didn't even acknowledges that, that word was hurtful to other people. Now, basically, this episode was later banned sometime in 2006 after previously banned from the rotation on PBS and Sprout, now renamed as Universal Kids, after the original broadcast on the network because of the word stupid. It can be hurtful and was used 10 times in the episode. However, it was shown during the reruns and a few times in 2003. So, I mean, I will say, some of these kid shows involve, kids, cursing, but not really cursing or anything, but kind of like saying, certain words that, can hurt people. And, Caillou learned it, but he didn't even understand that it can hurt people. And it honestly, I mean, I think it's a dumb reason that they banned this episode because of it, but like I said, it could have maybe be have like a little bit more added to it. Now, Caillou didn't get punished for that either. Kind of makes me wonder why his parents don't even punish him for it. Literally, I don't blame a lot of people why they don't like this episode. It's the worst episode. It's one of the worst episodes of season 2, but of course, it definitely doesn't surprise me that a lot of the times it was, you know, was there. So I definitely do need to sit here and say, say that it's just messed up. But like I'm just gonna say, this is just simply me being honest. So yeah. But like I said, I mean, to be fair, I mean, a lot of kids shows, tend to use certain words as swear words. Like take the Berenstain Bears for example. They used furball as probably as a curse word. Like what was they actually trying to say? Asshole or something? I mean, that's possible, but like I said, I cannot really understand, what they were trying to do, but at the same time, I do understand what they mean. Caillou at daycare. Now, another season 1 episode. This basically involves Caillou's mom taking Caillou to daycare because she has to work. And she tries to reassure Caillou that daycare could be fun, but, knowing that Caillou, this is his first time at daycare, he prefers to stay at his grandma's better. But eventually he meets Leo, who happens to be sitting there and basically being a bully to Caillou. But later on, you do see he becomes Caillou's friend, and he also befriends a girl named Clementine. Now, basically, this episode, I think it's dumb that they banned this episode, but the reason why it was banned was because due to a lot of crying. Now, I will say, going to daycare or school or whatever, it can be a struggle for, people, especially if it's their first day or, first time going to school in their life. It can be very, very scary to some. And, you know, being nervous about the first day of school or daycare or whatever, it is valid, to feel nervous, but daycare and school are, good places for you to go and learn stuff because, you know, this is how, I became myself today is, I went to school and, I learned stuff and I took it with a grain of salt to to learn everything that I had to learn, and that's how where I am at today. So I can understand, Caillou is used to being at his grandma's house. I don't know why his parents could have just dropped him off at his grandma's house. Maybe grandma and grandpa were busy or something and they couldn't look after Caillou. That's just my theory personally, but it's not really explained. But the later episode you do see, Caillou starts to like daycare, later on. And I think it's just a dumb reason that, Caillou that this episode was basically banned due to a lot of crying. And to be honest, I find that it's pretty much a dumb reason, but that is just my opinion, but I can't really say for certain if there were other ways that Caillou could have coped with it, maybe if there were somebody that Caillou knew before he met Clementine and Leo, then maybe he would have been a lot more comfortable. But, like I said, starting daycare or school can be very stressful to some people, especially if it's their, first day going to school and all. So, yeah, that's definitely going to sit here and say that, yeah, that's just literally my own personal opinion about this episode. But overall, I just think it's a dumb reason that they banned this episode. But, you know, that's just me. But, everybody has other opinions too. Caillou goes around the block. This episode is basically Caillou's mom is sleeping and Caillou wants to, explore and go around the block. So he basically, walks around the block and, he runs into this girl playing hopscotch. He gets himself wet by the sprinkler. He ends up seeing Sarah with a big dog. And eventually he runs into somebody that he knows along with his that they know his parents, and they end up taking Caillou back to his house. Basically, this episode was banned, permanently banned, I may add, because Caillou's mom leaves him unattended due to her sleeping. I think to be honest, his mom shouldn't be sleeping if she's not going to be looking after Caillou. Like, she should have been up supervising Caillou. Like, Caillou could have got kidnapped, or he could have gotten lured where to a place where to like a unshady van or something. Like, all those possibilities could have happened to Caillou if his mom wasn't paying attention, to which she wasn't. And the fact that Caillou goes around the block, to be honest, he wanders around the neighborhood by himself, but thankfully the good thing is that Caillou walked in back by somebody who his mom knows. So despite this banned episode, the footage can still be seen in the intro. So that is definitely something. But yeah, I mean, the way you could find Caillou Goes Around the Block is on YouTube, because it is on YouTube. Tube for any of you guys who want to watch it, it is on YouTube. So that's pretty much the only way you can watch it, because it is permanently banned from TV. So I mean, to be honest, there could have been, somebody luring Caillou out of his house and hurt him and stuff. I mean, that's just what would have happened to him. But, that is just me. But I'm also being honest, is that this episode really definitely teaches people that, adults, that you should always be watching your children no matter their what they're doing. And you never know what could happen to their kid if you look away from them for even just a minute. Freeze a crowd. This episode is definitely another episode that makes my blood rage. And this episode basically involves Caillou, Rosie, Z being taken to the park by Caillou's mom, which of course we see Leo's mom and Clementine's mom. So Caillou ends up trying to play with Leo and Clementine, but he accidentally breaks Clementine's bucket, and they pretty much were assholes to Caillou. And Caillou tries to play by himself, but then he wanted to play with Leo and Clementine, but he eventually tells his mom of what happened. And they eventually start playing together for again. And, once they reconcile, which, I mean, you know, I really wish that, there would have been something else. So basically, this episode was banned because of the fact that Leo and Clementine were both being unreasonable by getting angry with Caillou over something that was an accident and not apologizing to him. That pretty much literally shows how much fucking assholes that they are for sitting there and, not apologizing to Caillou just because he did an accident. Like, getting angry over a simple mistake, it's just literally pathetic. Like, I'm gonna sit here and say this right now. I have been there where people would literally get angry at me just over a simple mistake, and I literally don't understand why people would think, that this is fine. When literally, getting angry, unreasonably angry over an accident, which of course is just dumb. Like, I mean, if someone does something and it's an accident, I just, pretty much just say, I know you didn't mean to, it was an accident, and move on. Now, you can find this episode on YouTube because it is on YouTube for any of you guys who are curious as to this episode. But I really just don't like the fact that, the reason why Clementine and Leo were both being assholes to Caillou, which I think, it's basically Caillou torture porn episode. I'm not saying it's actually torture porn, but it's pretty much Caillou torture episode. I mean, yeah, there are quite a few of them. I definitely will need to say there are quite a few Caillou episodes. They do end up torturing him. So there's definitely that. So there's nothing really much to see about that. So I'm just definitely going to sit here and be brutally honest with you guys. So yeah. Hide and seek. Now this episode it basically involves Caillou playing hide and seek with Rosie. However, this episode was later banned in 2006 due to Caillou being aggressive, taking his toys away from Rosie, and making her cry. Also being mean to parents too about Rosie taking all of his toys. I definitely do need to sit here and say is that Caillou should have sat there and, no, just tell Rosie that he doesn't want her to play with those toys and to put them back or something. That would have made this episode better. But the fact that he's just mean to Rosie, I really just don't like that Caillou picks on Rosie. Like, this is definitely something I really don't get. Is like why Caillou, picks on his sister. Like, there are episodes where he does pick on his sister. Some of them are not even banned, which I'm not really surprised. But like with this episode involving Caillou, it just I really don't understand this episode. Like, they should have been playing nicely when all of a sudden they end up getting really mad. So, like, it's just really something I don't really understand why it doesn't make sense. But yeah. Caillou makes a new friend. Now, basically, this episode, oh, definitely was. Basically, this episode was prohibited due to Jim's bullying and being a little too intense. Although Jim learned his lesson and starts being nice to Caillou. Basically, the episode goes is Caillou, you and his grandpa go to the park, and Caillou starts playing with this boy named Jim. However, Jim started bullying Caillou, and Caillou gets really upset because of the fact that, he was bullying him. I really don't understand how come Jim wasn't even punished in this episode for being mean to Caillou. I mean, while I will say is, Caillou was no better, Jim should have sat there and he should have gotten punished for the way he treated Caillou and for the way he bullied him. I really wish that Jim would have gotten bullied. This episode was pretty much prohibited because of the fact that, due to Jim's bullying tactics. Like, I don't really understand why Jim had to be such a dick to Caillou, but basically, that's the case. So, the episode pretty much has been banned. But the way you could find this episode is on YouTube because it is on YouTube. So it's one of the only ways you could watch this episode is on YouTube. And the fact that, I really didn't like Jim because of the fact that he was a total asshole to Caillou. But, Caillou didn't deserve that kind of bullying treatment. I mean, some people might be saying, I'm being a little too nice about Caillou. Well, that's still, well, there's definitely something understanding about is Jim being a bully. So, I never really liked Jim to begin with in this episode. I really did not like it. So, because I remember when I first saw this episode, my blood was boiling as a kid because I didn't like the way Jim treated Caillou. So, yeah. Caillou's promise. Now, this episode basically involves Caillou was upset that he had to share the sandbox with Rosie, so he brushes dirt in Rosie's eyes. Now Caillou's mom had to go out and tells Caillou to promise to be nice to Rosie and stuff. So Caillou reluctantly promises, even though he didn't want to, but then, his dad takes him and Rosie to the park where Caillou ends up playing with Jason and Jeffrey, and they invite him to the circus. However, Caillou wanted to go to the circus because his friends promised him. And of course, this episode basically was later banned in 2006 because Caillou furiously threw sand in Rosie's eyes, causing her to cry and him having his bad behavior. Also, angrily prohibiting her from ever going to the circus at lunchtime at his house. That was one of the reasons why Caillou, you never got punished for it. He never got punished for the way he treated his sister in that episode. Like, I don't understand how come Caillou's parents don't punish him for simple things that he did to hurt Rosie. Like, I don't understand it. Like, Caillou should have got what he deserved, but at the same time, there was still no excuse or reason for Caillou to do this. But like I said, you never really know about Caillou. And to be honest, this is kind of one of the reasons why I really did not like the episode of Caillou, which is Caillou's Promise. But, you could find this episode on YouTube, so most of these Caillou episodes you could find on YouTube for any of you guys who are wondering. So, yeah, there's definitely sitting there and doing that. I definitely do need to point out is that Caillou making his sister cry twice honestly shows how heartless asshole he can honestly be. So I'm not really surprised that Caillou turns out this way. But I mean, he does mature in, the later after season 2, but I really just don't like him in season 1. I really don't. Caillou's quarrel. Now, this episode basically involves Caillou and Clementine doing like a play date, but however, Clementine wants to play a game that she wants to play. Caillou wants to play a game that he wants to play, and they can't seem to get along, and they end up fighting. So, this episode, however, was banned later in 2006 due to Caillou being too rough with Clementine. Although he did apologize to Clementine, however, the episode aired on Cartoon Ito, but was still with the most of Caillou's anger at Clementine being cut out, going directly to Caillou telling her that he doesn't want to play with her anymore after Clementine suggests the tea party. This has a side effect of turning the quarrel into more of a mild disagreement, rendering the episode pretty much meaningless. Now, I definitely do need to sit here and say I don't think they should have banned the Caillou episode just because Caillou had an argument with Clementine. It should have, have like a little meaning to the story, involving, whenever Caillou sits there and, gets into an argument, the message should have said, sometimes we have arguments, but you can still you still love your friends no matter what they went through or whatever. I mean, that could have been a really good episode if that was the case, but unfortunately that was not the case for this episode, and it just involves Caillou being a jerk to Clementine. So it doesn't really surprise me that he would simply do that. So there's definitely that. Caillou's getting older. Now, this is not a really an episode I don't like. I personally don't find this episode to be, kind of, you know, pretty much making me angry. But basically, this episode was later banned in 2006. So basically, Caillou's getting older. Der, involves Caillou and his dad finding a dead bird, and Caillou ends up getting upset because of the fact that he's been hearing certain that everybody says they're getting older and stuff. And Caillou's just afraid of, dying. Like, it's just an early fear of death. Like, we shouldn't fear death, but at the same time, we kind of do. So, I mean, everybody does fear differently when it comes to death. But however, this episode was banned because of how dark its its episode is, and it was due to the subjects of death and fear of getting older, and a dead bird was appearing on the screen. So the only way you can watch this episode is on YouTube. But, this pretty much was teaching kids about death. Now, we all know we're going to die one day at an old age or whatever. But, like I said before, I don't hate this episode. I really don't. But I really do feel that this episode really has a good meaning that everybody gets older in life and one day they're not going to be around anymore. Like, I'm gonna say, I mean, I still have my parents and they're still living today, but one of these I never know when they're gonna pass. I mean, you know, I have to be prepared for that. And this teaches people like when, somebody's getting older and they're close to dying or whatever, you got to be prepared for this stuff, but you never are truly, and it hurts. So I can understand why they banned this episode of Caillou, and I generally cannot blame the people for it. I think maybe it was just a little too dark for kids to understand death. Now, however, we did get to know about death a little bit in other shows, like take a look at the Big Comfy Couch Full of Life. That episode just involves, Lunette pretty much sitting there and wanting to play with the caterpillar, but the caterpillar was alive at first, and then after a few scenes later, the caterpillar dies. So basically, she learns from Granny Garbanzo that, the caterpillar was alive, but eventually dies because of whatever reason. Sometimes it could be natural causes, sickness, injury, or whatever it can be. You know, I can understand why they banned this episode to begin with, and I really cannot blame them for it. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the dark episodes of Caillou. It's not really super dark, but it's definitely a dark episode. Caillou watches Rosie. This episode basically involves Caillou, you and his sister Rosie playing when meanwhile his mom says to them to start drawing because, she had a headache and needed to go lie down. So basically while they're drawing, Caillou ends up seeing his sister drawing on the walls and he tries to take the marker away from Rosie. Rosie ends up crying about it, and then Caillou gets blamed for it by his mom because, Caillou is trying to get Rosie to stop. But eventually they clean up the wall and eventually Caillou ends up playing with Rosie again. Now, this episode of Caillou was later banned in 2006 due to Caillou being unfairly blamed for Rosie's behavior, although she was just only a child, well, a toddler, and also because of Rosie hitting Caillou 3 times. I mean, I can understand why they banned that episode because of the fact that, Caillou gets blamed for no reason. It's just as bad as Horrid Henry getting blamed for something he didn't do. Like, seriously, I know there are many episodes of Horrid Henry that involve Henry getting un unrightfully blamed for something that he didn't do, whatever it was Perfect Peter or what it be with someone else, he still gets blamed for it anyway, which honestly still enrages me knowing that Caillou got blamed for something that he didn't even do, even though he was trying to stop Rosie for doing something that she did. Oh man. But I mean, to be honest, if you look on YouTube, you can definitely see that Caillou definitely has had a fair share of, being blamed for stuff. Although, it's, most of the time it's justifiable, but other times it's just a dumb reason why they blamed him in the first place. So that's definitely one of the reasons why Caillou should, you know, not be scolded at certain parts. So, yeah. Rosie bothers Caillou. Well, boy, you probably thought Caillou Joins the Circus was going to be at number one, but this episode literally takes the prize. Basically, in Rosie bothers Caillou, basically involves Caillou wanting to play by himself, but Rosie just wants to play with Caillou when Caillou doesn't want to play with her. So he basically tries to tell his mom that he doesn't want to play with Rosie, but his mom tells Rosie to work it out themselves. Well, Caillou to work it out themselves. Caillou ends up pushing Rosie out of his bedroom, and then she ends up being upset. And however, Caillou talks back to his mother, and eventually later on, after playing by himself for a while, Caillou decides to play with Rosie at the end, and that's the episode. Overall, this episode was later banned in 2006 due to a lot of screaming and yelling in this episode. Caillou eventually violently talks back to his mother. There was a scene where an angry Caillou pushes Rosie out of his room. Rosie cries, bangs on the door to Caillou's door to let her back in, and hits a book against the door repeatedly. And Doris grabs the book from Rosie and then yells, "Books are for reading, not for hitting." Doris then eventually knocks on the door to let Caillou back in, but she didn't realize that he made her cry, and she continues to throw a temper tantrum. Rosie is sorry for Doris as the mom takes her straight back to her room for a nap. Despite the ending where Caillou learns that playing with Rosie is fun, I definitely do need to sit here and say is that Caillou is just literally, wanting to be by himself. I mean, the fact that he was, rude to his mom and rude to his sister and gave his sister a hard time just because she wants to play with him. I mean, I will sit here and say, I mean, there are times where I do play with my brother, like whatever be video games or just hanging around. But there are times where my brother wants to be by himself, to which I understand. And sometimes it's the other way around when my brother wants to play with me, and other times I just want to be by myself. I mean, to be brutally honest, when it comes to, these things, you never really know when you're going to have fun playing with someone. But I mean, playing by yourself is okay every now and then, but sometimes when it comes to playing with people, it's more fun playing with others than playing by themselves. However, I definitely do need to sit here and say is that, this episode could have been better if Caillou wasn't so mean towards Rosie, see, or something. Or I would really wish Caillou's mom would have punished Caillou for talking back to her and for making Rosie cry and pushing her out of his bedroom. I mean, if she punished Caillou like that, that would have really helped out a lot more. But at the same time, I really don't understand why they didn't do that. I really don't. But I guess with that being said, I'm just going to sit here and say is that you can always always watch these episodes on YouTube if you've not seen them. But however, I will sit here and wrap up this video because there's nothing really much to say. So be sure to follow me on my other socials and my backup channel. Links to all those will be in the About page section, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, that's pretty much all I have to say about these episodes. What do you guys think of these episodes? Do you agree with me on this list? Do you disagree? Let me know what they are in the comment section down below, because I personally would like to hear what you guys think. So, as always, I will see you all next time, and roll the outro, because I'm out. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.